Hi everyone, I'm Jara Joyce, founder of GJ Attitude, my personal brand dedicated to raising awareness about narcissistic abuse and abusive relationships. Welcome to a new episode of Not a Princess Detox series, where I interview experts to help us better understand abuse, trauma, and healing. Today's topic explores an aspect of coercive control that isn't talked about nearly enough. How alcohol and drugs can be used as tools of manipulation and control in abusive relationships. We'll be discussing how some abusers use substances to lower boundaries, create dependency, distort reality, and maintain power over their victims. I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, Kimberly Weeks, a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
To start, could you tell us what inspired you to become a narcissistic abuse recovery coach?
Originally, it was going through a very, very hellacious marriage and coming out on the other side of it 9 years ago, having never heard the word narcissism, having never heard anything about coercive control, or even understanding the power and control wheel or anything like that. And I just knew that something really awful had happened to me. I was a mother of 4 at the time. I had 3 children still at home, 1 going to college. And I started on a journey to figure out what the heck just happened to me. In that journey, I discovered that I was raised by a narcissistic abuser in my family system. And I married someone just like them. And so I started this process of trying to figure out exactly what's the language, what were the tactics, what happened to me so that I could kind of make sense of the nonsense. And from there, became a coach and started specializing in narcissistic abuse recovery. And since then, I have co-founded an institute called the Global Trauma Institute, where we train practitioners and coaches as well, so that they can walk alongside survivors just like I do.
Wow, amazing. Really similar to what was my journey and what brought me here to be here with you today and interviewing you, which I'm really, really excited because this topic is really something that many of us don't know when they are in an abusive relationship. That is at the same time extremely important to know so we can recognize it. So let's dive into the first question. How can alcohol and drugs become tools of coercive control in abusive relationships?
I've had this personal experience. I had it in my marriage and I even had it in other relationships. The way that an abuser has to sort of lower your values, lower your inhibitions, lower your defenses to be able to put up boundaries for what you do and don't want to participate with, is to introduce things that disorient you in ways where you are more likely to respond to suggestions, their invitations, or the kind of wild stuff that they want done. So they will begin by saying things that help you feel like to drink a lot or to try different experimental things that you've never tried before, are ways for you to be cool, ways for you to be accepted, ways for you to belong, or for them to see you as a really good partner. So they introduce it and they start that coercive control by introducing the whole concept as a way for them to have adventure, fun, and for you to be special to them. That's the first way that they do it. Then they move to progressively more and more of those things so that then you become either hooked on that alcohol or drugs, or it becomes a way to make other people look at you as if you are potentially the person that has some kind of mental disorder or addiction. That shame, so they do it first by inviting you into adventure, then they shame you for having participated in the very thing that they drew you in to participate with, so that you will be more likely to do the things that they want you to do or try the things that they want you to try that are really against things you've already told them violate your standards, your values, and your morals. And if that doesn't work, then they will move and advance to doing things like putting things in your drinks, putting things in your food, doing things where you are not even aware that you're being drugged. And we've seen cases like this across the globe where wives have been drugged in their sleep and then their husbands invited other men in to sexually violate them, rape them, etc. it will move to them doing it, and you're not even aware it's happening, so that they can do with what they want to do with your body. That's kind of the progression. It starts as this kind of enticement for adventure and for fun, and it moves progressively into a way to get you to be safe. Because if you're being shamed into drinking more, or trying a different
Yeah.
substance, and you're in already a dominating environment, then you're more likely to just kind of, because they keep asking over and over again, give in, so that you can just be safe for that individual situation. And then eventually it's happening and you don't even know it's happening. That's the progression with alcohol and substances.
Yeah, which, as you are already mentioned, becomes very dangerous for the victim, because
Correct.
we have, like, let's say I'll start from point one. So, because I know that eventually people, they do want to understand. Because if you see it from the outside, you'd say, well, nobody's gonna force me to drink. And for example, I went through it and I wasn't forced to drink, but
Correct.
it was more like, oh, wow, you're not fun tonight. Like, what am I gonna do with you if you're not fun? Why don't
Yes.
you drink? So it's not like forcing you into doing something, but eventually it is. So if we want maybe to discuss a bit more how they get you to
Yes.
make that decision apparently by yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So all of this is underneath the banner of our nervous system picking up cues of safety and danger. So they start off in a very light way typically. And the way that they're doing it is, that's a way for you to have connection. If you're dating someone, or if you're in a relationship with someone, they're inviting you into something that's going to bond you and make the relationship better, which of course is your objective too. So they're introducing things in a way that, even though it's manipulation, because they have an agenda, they present it to you like candy, like a cake. They present it to you like it's something that's going to be a celebratory, or some kind of adventure, or some kind of way for you all to have more sexual chemistry, or whatever you want to call it. All of those things are your objectives already. So they present it to you in a way that is packaged in the way that would be things that were congruent with your own desires. From there, it becomes ratcheted up, and then it becomes force, because in order for you to get out of the situation safely, because your body's picking up cues of safety and danger, you have to comply. And if you don't comply, you don't know what danger is coming after you continuing to say no to that person. And they're behaving more and more aggressively over time, which, that's what your body's picking up. That's how it moves into force. And people will say, why can't you just say no? Why is that
Yeah.
this isn't something that happens quickly. This is something that happens little bit by little bit over time. And then all of a sudden you have been conditioned, when you get with that person, to drink. You have been, it's been normalized for that person at the last minute to introduce a gummy or substance, a brownie, something in it that you don't even know what's in it. And when you push back and those cues of danger come up, and they keep repeatedly asking over and over and over, the term is called attrition tactics. Attrition tactics are when the person wears you down by repeatedly asking you the same thing over and over again. And eventually these things are happening. It could be in a vehicle that's moving fast. It could be in a closed environment where you're not easily able to get out of it. They ask you things when you're compromised and vulnerable. And in order for you to safely exit the situation, you go along with it. And so even though it's forced, it isn't physical force, it's psychological force. That's what coercion is, and coercive control is. It's mind games and psychological warfare.
You mentioned that, and this, I believe, relates with the entire package of manipulation, but I'd like to talk about a bit, since I understand, again, that from the outside, someone that has never been through manipulation don't understand how is it possible that you're not saying just no. You mentioned this is not something that happens right away. It takes,
Correct.
it happens little by little. I believe we should take a moment to repeat and explain what the real manipulation is and why our brain is not just responding with a simple no.
Yeah, the real manipulation is them love bombing, or I call it identity fraud. Intimacy fraud. It's the person establishing a connection with you and mirroring you based on the things that you're telling them you desire in a partner in a relationship. They present those things as if they share those values, those desires, and they build a bond and a connection with you. People will say it's a fast-moving relationship. The person was everything I ever wanted. They've studied you extensively online and otherwise through the questions they're asking you at the beginning of the relationship and presenting a persona that is everything that you have ever wanted in a partner. So when that happens, you are actually lulled into a kind of being disarmed, feeling safe and connected with the person, and feeling like that person cares about you, really wants to be in relationship with you. All of that makes it possible for people to have intimacy, emotionally, physically, or otherwise. That's the beginning of the manipulation. In a narcissistically abusive relationship, then all of a sudden there start to be these small moments when that person who has been so amazing switches quickly. And that switch happens, and then all of a sudden they're devaluing you, or they're using you as a butt of a joke, or they're humiliating you, or they're doing something that's, very uncharacteristic to the beginning of the relationship dynamic that you had, and it's very disorienting. That causes your brain to not understand what the heck is going on, and then they represent that sweet, kind, nice person. All of these dynamics are happening, and in the middle of it, alcohol is being introduced, a substance for fun. Let's try it. I've never done it before. It would be so cool. I really wanted to find someone who was safe enough for me to try this with. Gets introduced. So it's a big context to someone offering. If someone just came out and you've told them you don't do drugs, you never drink, and they just offered it to you, you would never say yes to that. So they have to create an attachment with you so that you're disarmed and you begin the process of accepting those little boundary pushes that they give to you. I don't know, was that your experience?
Yeah, I think that it was placed more on the fun level.
Sure.
I also believe that in my case, he knew that I was actually looking for fun. I just moved by then, I just moved to New York, so it was an entirely new life for me. So I was kind of like, let's say that my boundaries weren't that up. My guard wasn't that up. So
Okay.
I just wanted to enjoy it. I just wanted to have fun. And I believe that he put himself into that moment of my life where I wanted that experience, but just because I wanted to try something new, which doesn't mean though that I wanted to do on that term, because then it became like every night we gotta do it again, we gotta go to party, we gotta do, and if I couldn't hold up to that, that was me being boring. So that was the difference, because I remember that I had a thought about it after you and I had a conversation on this, and I didn't recall myself doing the same things when I was back in my country. And I said, why all of a sudden did you start acting like this way? And for acting, I mean literally dragging myself out every night, even when I was tired, even when I didn't want to drink, even when I didn't want to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
So,
That's called conditioning. They're actually creating the environment where they are having you do something habitually that gets you into a connection or a rhythm of connecting that person, going out, and alcohol and substances. So you actually start, I call it assuming the position. You know how with, law enforcement, they'll tell somebody assume the position, and that's for you to put your hands behind your back so that they can handcuff you. When a person is a predator or an abuser, they create certain patterns that actually entrain you and condition you to associate that person with
Yep.
going to certain places and doing certain things. That's a part of that grooming, conditioning, and manipulation. And so you almost start, they don't even have to say it to you anymore. You start assuming the position because they've mentally conditioned you to associate them with certain activities, people, places, and things, and substances. And so you actually start setting it up. That's how they know they've completely taken your mind over, because you start setting the atmosphere
Yeah.
based on how they've conditioned you to see the interaction with them. Absolutely.
And then I think we can connect to another point. Then we'll see the second part of all this conditioning is when you keep creating that environment, but then they look at you and they say, "No, I don't want to do it anymore."
Yes.
So now you feel like I am the one. It's not about them, because there are, I believe, two sides. One is, well, nobody was forcing me to do it. That was my own decision, which then you don't realize that they actually conditioned you to do it.
Correct.
And the second part, which I believe you can talk about, is when then they took themselves out of it. So it's you now doing
Yes.
it.
So that is a big part of how they switch into the devaluation, because now they have gotten you into the habit of drinking alcohol, being drunk, being out, being, a certain kind of party person or party girl. And then they start then pulling themselves into almost like a moral superiority to say, that's not really, I never really wanted to do X, Y, or Z. Why are you always, they will project and turn the table. So now you're being seen as the person, because they've trained you to do it, that's trying to push a certain agenda, so that then they can turn around and point the finger at you and say that you're the one who has an alcohol problem, a drug problem, an addiction problem. And they can use that narrative to talk to everybody around you in a smear campaign, to paint you as the person in the relationship that's unstable, who's crazy, and an addict, when they have been the ones to introduce, condition, and groom and manipulate. And when they pull out of it, it's almost like a power play, because now they know that this is not something that you have been habitually doing. They have been doing it, and they don't have necessarily the same takeover to or response to alcohol, especially if it's male and female in terms of body weight and differences with all of that. They don't even have that. You guys can drink the same thing, and it's like they didn't drink anything, and you're on the floor, right?
Yeah.
That's when cameras start getting pulled out, phones start getting pulled out, recording starts to happen, so they can have evidence that they're completely sound and safe and sound, uninebriated, and there you are on the floor or at the toilet because you're drunk again. These are the ways that they are able to then paint you and then shame you, because they have those recordings, into doing other things that violate what you desire to do, your morals, your values, or what is a free will choice for you. And it is a very slow progression. Again, I want to say that you go from it being a connection point where we need to have a good time and we need to do something together that's adventurous, to now you're being asked to do things that go way outside of anything that you've ever desired to do, so that they don't release those tapes or that audio, or tell anybody about how often you're drinking every night and you're out of control. And there's a lot of spouses, partners, who have become addicts and alcoholics and drug addicts, and it was introduced by one of these abusers. And sometimes they say they're taking it with you, they say they're drinking with you, but they're actually not. They just keep pushing the substance across the table, so that you're the one that is drunk and inebriated or disoriented, and they can sit back and watch the whole thing. They are getting a lot of power, of a sense of power and control in those environments.
I'd like to get a little deeper in what you just said. First of all, I'd like to specify, when we say slow progression, so that the audience understand that we're not talking about 2 weeks. Like manipulation doesn't happen in 2 weeks. So
Right.
that would be my first question. Let's specify, let's have them understand that we're talking about a long period of time,
Yeah, we're
right?
talking months and sometimes years. It depends on the level of abuser and predator you're dealing with. People, these personalities have a long game. And from the day that they meet you, they have in their mind that there are certain places they want to take you in terms of doing things against your will, whatever that is, whether it's turning your finances over to them, doing things sexually, threesomes, all kinds of different sexual polyamory things, whatever it is that they have in their mind at the very beginning, they set out to entrain you, entrap you, and condition you over months and sometimes years to get you to the place where now you're doing things that you've never done before or even thought to do. And so that's the first thing. I think what many people struggle with when they hear survivor stories is how, like, I know you. How did that person get you to do all of that? And you're not talking about something that happened in the first couple of months. You're talking about years of conditioning and manipulation, years of mental, psychological warfare, years often, especially in marriages where you may have been saying no, 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 over and over and over and over again, and eventually you gave in. All of that, by the way, is non-consensual. They have violated your consent, even if you say yes, because they've worn you down. And I think people need to recognize that even though you said yes, at this point you said it for safety and because you were exhausted emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and otherwise, and often physically, and it's coercive control, it's a violation of your consent, and it is abuse.
It is. I believe it's very important. It's something that I see that eventually a lot of people have difficulties to understand. That is,
Yeah.
we're not talking about something that happens overnight. We're talking about a behavior that, as you said, can switch from night to the day and then goes back to be the best, the most beautiful person of your life. But then over time, your nervous system, your brain gets confused, and confusion is what they want to have, so that they have all the control over you. And I would like to continue this point talking about, so eventually going back to alcohol and drugs, how is it that they can get you addicted to it? Like how long usually would take, and what is it that they do to make sure that you're keep going on that direction and eventually becoming addicted to it?
Well, from the addiction standpoint, it totally depends on what the substance is, how much, from a body's perspective. If you are a person, and this was my situation, that does not drink at all, that doesn't do drugs at all, and you get introduced to substances that cause complete disorientation to your body because you don't do those kinds of things on a regular basis or at all, then it doesn't take a lot of experiences to get to the place where you could be, your window of capacity or tolerance start to kind of change. And when that happens, you need more of that drug or that alcohol in order to get the same feeling or high. That's how addictions form. And so you have to drink more. You have to do a higher dosage. You have to do more drugs and more things in combination. And over time, this is being sprinkled with, you've been taken on a vacation. You've been whisked away to Dubai. You've been gone, you're in Thailand or, some country, in Bangkok. You're doing all of these things. The backdrop of it is it's supposed to be this wonderful experience. So now the person is associating them with these atmospheres that are supposed to be relaxing and luxurious and all of these different things, and alcohol and drugs is associated with all of it. So if you don't do drugs at all or alcohol, drink, we might have a social drink here and there, and then all of a sudden you're doing it and you've gotten to the place where you're doing it daily and they're not, while they're offering it to you daily or pushing you to do it daily. That's how you become an addict.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long if you're not a person that has been doing this your whole life. for that to happen. It could be, in 6 months. Now, because of the abusive devaluation, you're turning to alcohol to feel relief. You're turning to that drug to feel
Yeah.
less pain from those reactions or interactions with that person. And so it starts as something that's supposed to be fun, but it becomes a place of numbing. And it numbs you from the abusive dynamic that you have with the partner.
Yeah.
And that is the switch that they make, and how they get you to then use the substance as a escape. The first one is a fun escape. The next one is an escape from pain. And that's how it transpires with one of these abusers.
And I have a question for you, because I think it's really connected to what we just said. Can an abuser, we already know the answer, but we can dive in a bit. Can an abuser use a victim's intoxication to rewrite events or convince them that their memory can't be trusted?
Absolutely. Especially if you are not a person who drinks or does drugs on a regular basis. They have then the ability to start narrating the story of what you did, what you said, what you wanted. And again, this is also a way that they program and mind control you, because they just keep repeating their narrative and their story. You were disoriented and inebriated, or not fully connected to what was happening in the present. And over time, they train the victim and survivor to basically come into agreement with their version of events. And they tell those version of events in front of you to others. So if you're sitting there and you were drunk and you don't remember, and they're telling the story, that actually starts to brainwash you into believing that that's what took place, even though it didn't happen that. And so that whole use of substances is a way for you to not have the clarity to communicate what's happening in the present situation with them, to be able to testify, express, or substantiate what you're actually experiencing with that abusive person, because they can always point back to the alcohol or always point back to the drug. And by the way, they're saying you did it, and you did it voluntarily. So it wasn't like they forced it on you.
No.
All of these ways and methods and tactics are very strategic, calculated ways of being able to absolve themselves of any responsibility for anything that happens to you. So if you overdose, if you end up in the hospital, it wasn't their fault. This was you're out. They're making up the whole story while you're there in the emergency room. They're telling the people what took place, and you're not able to express it because you're out. And I've experienced this.
Yeah, that must be terrible. I can't even imagine. It's scary. It's scary not to be in control of your own body and your own environment. And unfortunately, with manipulation, this is exactly what happens. Like you fully lose control. Like in this case, I'd say 100% you lose control, because you can't even stand up. So it's very dangerous. This is why it's very important that we're having this meeting today, because I really want everyone that is listening to us to understand the real dynamic with these people. This is really dangerous in all terms.
It is no different than being at a party and someone putting a substance in your drink and raping you when you're unconscious. It just happens over a slower period of time of their conditioning, because their intent and their agenda from the beginning was to get you to this place. And I think that's one of the hard things that a lot of survivors struggle with, is the fact that they, in their minds, participated with this person.
Yeah.
And they start to take on blame and shame, because that's what the abuser is saying to them, that it's their fault, and they turn the tables on them completely. And the reality is this is a predator who preyed on you and set out to get you to the place where you were outside of your mind and your function, or your ability to control your own physical body. And they did it so they could exploit it, take advantage of you, and use you, or to set you up to be the fall guy for anything that could happen in those situations. A big part of this is the abuser's need for novelty, thrill seeking and excitement. And they are addicted to that. So they have to keep ratcheting up the risks that they take, the thrills that they seek, and using you to put you in those unsafe situations. They don't put themselves in those unsafe situations because they actually get some kind of thrill by proxy by seeing you lose control and you be in a position where those drugs or alcohol could cause harm to you. They get a sense of like almost like a charge of power, of control, of dominance, almost like a godlike scenario where they're puppeting and pulling the strings, and they can sit back and see that from that position of, look what I got her to do,
Yeah, yeah, and feel empowered because
and
they
feel
got you.
empowered. And it's male and female. This happens male and female, more often with females, but that's what's really happening. They set out to set you up like this in order for them to get a hit or get off to the power and the control and the charge that they get by getting someone to do something against their will. It's a kind of, I call it like evil witchcraft type environment.
Yeah,
They're manipulating behind the scenes all the time, and you're there thinking you're interfacing with the person to have a relationship that's fun and exciting, and you get to connect and bond. That's what you're there for. They're there to humiliate you. All that we're talking about are what we call humiliation rituals. What they can get someone to do that makes them feel like they matter. They have significance. They have importance in the world because they're able, for men who are doing this to women, to play all of these women and to get them to do things against their will. They must be a powerful person. That's
Yeah.
the story they're telling them.
yeah. This is really true and sad. I would
And
say.
sad. Yeah, it is. Think about it. If there was a child trafficker who was able to build a relationship with a child and get that child to then start going into private spaces to do all kinds of acts that they have conditioned and groomed the child to see as normal and then traffic them, nobody would look at that situation and hold that child responsible. They would say that that adult had an agenda, preyed on them, set out to exploit, manipulate, and use them. There is no difference than
Yeah.
people doing this in relationships to adults because they're actually preying on the base desires for connection and bonding that come from wanting to have belonging in a family system or in a connection with a partner. They're preying on that base desire, and it's a young desire because all of us want to belong. All of us want to be accepted. All of us want connection and want to have partnership. And they're preying on the innocence of that.
Yeah, which is actually, now that you mentioned that, you made me think about like one of the worst things that happens when you're manipulated is that you're literally trusting a person, as you said. You're trusting that I'm drinking with you because you're gonna keep me safe. You're
Right.
trusting that I'm gonna do that because you are with me, and I'm doing it because we are gonna have a good time. And I believe that once you, one of the hardest part of putting yourself out of a toxic relationship is that feeling of broken trust, but it's on a different level. We're not talking about just a friend that betrayed you somehow. We're talking about fully trusting a person, because this is what happens, right? We have been depraved, and they are going around building trust and telling you, I am here for you. They make you feel that way. And then
Yes.
all of a sudden, you understand that the person that you trusted the most is the one that is entirely breaking that trust.
Yeah. And the person who set out to do. I think that's the part for me, because they've done it many times to many people. And they
Yeah.
will brag that they've done it many times to many people and set out to do it. So when you sit back, and it's kind of like if you've ever watched Scooby-Doo, when they take the mask off of the masked man And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
who was this person? Like the whole time, the person who looked like they were helping you or trying to be close to you or trying to have a connection or a relationship with you or building a life with you was actually the person who was pulling you close enough so that they could harm you,
Yeah, I
so
did.
they could take advantage of you. And when they use substances that could cause your death, and if that were to happen, they would point the finger and say that you were the person and narrate the story that you were the person when they're the ones that had the agenda, introduced it, and set it out for you to become addicted or set it out for you to become inebriated or out of control. To me, there's something incredibly dark, evil, and wicked
Yeah.
about a person who thinks to do that to other human beings, let alone does it as a pattern of behavior across people over time. We're talking about serial abusers. In the same way people look at serial killers
Yeah.
and study them forensically, they look at the patterns, what they do, how they do it, their timing, their process. It's the same thing with these people. They are serial predators. And that's why it's so dangerous.
Yeah. This is really true. And now I have a good question for you.
Okay.
Is alcohol or drug use the cause of abuse, or it is used as a tool by people who are already abusive?
I think it's used as a tool if they can't get what they want by just regular coercion and pressure. That was my experience. If they can't get you through the love bombing and the connection to violate your value system, they will introduce substances which inhibit your ability to resist and make you more suggestible when you're underneath those moments where you're drunk or you're high or whatever you want to call it. When you are drunk and high or you're less inhibited, they actually start mentally programming you and mind controlling you even more. So now you come out of it, you're not, you're sobered up, you're all the rest of that, and you start having these thoughts because they've planted those thoughts, and they planted them when you were underneath the influence. And so I say it's not necessarily a characteristic of every abusive situation, but it is a characteristic of abusive situations when they have attempted to get you to compromise and you won't. And then they have to kind of go there. That's what I'm saying. Like eventually it becomes one of these things where they're crushing stuff up and putting it in your drink and you don't even know it. They're creating things in food and all the rest of that, or saying that something is something that it's not and actually has a drug in it, and you're not consenting at all because they have something in their mind that they want to do that's so depraved they know you won't go for it, so they have to actually like cause you to be completely taken out in order to get it accomplished. And so there's all kinds of dynamics where this happens. But I will say that the women that I have worked with, their husband introduced them to alcohol and drugs, and then they became addicted, and then they pulled back and stopped doing it and used the fact that the husband was not doing it anymore to then make everyone around their family and everyone around them as a couple see her as the addict and the problem, and him being the person that's just dealing with this stable woman. That's typically how it goes when they have lost control of the narrative, especially, or been exposed in any way.
What warning signs should people look for if they suspect substances are being used as part of coercive control?
The first one is going to be, how does the person respond when you tell them no? That awareness of how a person handles you setting a boundary of what you choose to do or not do, and how much pressure and continually asking you the same things and over. That's one thing that we just need to be aware of as to whether a person is actually a dangerous person or not. The second thing is, what happens when you go out with that person? Do you wake up the next morning and not remember things? Mm-hmm. To notice whether or not you may have had something slip to you or something that altered your state. Does the person, when you are in the middle of the night sleeping, wake you up asking you questions or asking you to take certain things and you're really not fully conscious? All of those things are things that you have to pay attention to, because those are things, or when you're about to go out. Let's say you're getting ready, y'all have planned to go do this incredible thing, and you're almost ready to walk out the door, and right when you're ready to walk out the door, they haven't said a word to you about anything the whole day or week. Right when you get ready to walk out the door, they say, hey, you know what, I went and got this thing, and I think we should take this together. It'll just make the night a lot of fun. We'll have a good time. It's low dose, it's no big deal. This was my experience. And they give it to you in transition. So it's like you don't have time to think, oh, the Uber's downstairs, we gotta get down there. But here, I'll take one, you take one. They're asking you to do something that's spur of the moment. They're presenting it as something that's not a big deal. And you don't really have time or space to think about what's happening, because it's like an ambush. That's one thing to pay attention to. How often are you having things introduced to you? You haven't had a discussion about it. And it's very last minute, and it's very in the middle of you in transition to do something, because that is a way to disarm you. And it also makes you more receptive, because the way they're presenting it to you is that it's not a big deal. And then later on that night, you might pass out at a table. That's the kind of stuff where that person, again, going back to humiliation rituals,
No.
is setting you up in front of other people to look like you're a person that is a full participant, and all of these things. And a part of it is they're doing it in ways where it would make a scene for you to not receive what they're doing, and it's more easy for you to just go along to get along, because you're shocked, you're disoriented, you're taken off guard, you're ambushed. How often is that happening with your person? That's what you need to pay attention to, because a safe person doesn't spring things on you like that. They want you to consent. And so there's conversation and discussion and agreement before you're doing things. Not a last minute request that you're disoriented and kind of not fully present and aware of what's happening, but they've planned the whole thing the whole time. Those are things to pay attention to.
Yeah, this is very important. Thank you for sharing that, Kimberly, because I really believe we can save a lot of people with this information. They're extremely useful.
Yeah.
So now I have a final question for you.
Okay.
And this will be all yours. What would you want someone to know if they're starting to realize substances have become part of the control in their relationship? And I would add to that, if there's anything that you would like to share with the audience, a message for them or anything that you'd love.
That's a really great question. I appreciate the opportunity to answer it. The first thing I would want them to know is that they need to talk to somebody about what they suspect. They don't need to try to figure it out in their own mind. The abuser has done a really great job up to that point of disorienting that person, gaslighting that person, and making them question reality. And so they need another person to hear what they're experiencing and to give them a read and an honest outside perspective, so that they can put their feet on the ground with what's happening with their partner or in a situation. It could be a friendship. There are friends that do this to each other, humiliation rituals. There are coworkers that do this with people that they don't like in the office, that they want to get rid of and set them up at a after party or after work event. This happens in multiple places. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Tell somebody what's going on. And it would be awesome if it was a trauma-informed person, because talking to your girlfriends or your friends or even his friends or her friends is probably not going to help you to be able to orient to the truth and reality of what's happening. And the other thing I would say that, because I've heard this a lot from clients, is this sense of shame and accountability that they take for what the other person did in the situation, what the other person's intention was, and what they strategized and calculated and set them up for. I want that person to know that they are not responsible in the same way that that little child who wanted an ice cream cone or some candy who received it from a predator is not at fault because a predator was preying on them. In the same way, people who find themselves in these situations and have now become addicted to or have become accustomed to taking certain substances because they were set up, this is not your fault. But it is going to be your responsibility to move forward from here, making decisions about what you do next so that you can safely get out, because a person who would do this is a dangerous person, so that you can safely get out of that relationship dynamic and start to cut that person's ability to have access to even be around you to do these same behaviors with you. It's going to take time, and it's going to take you having some support, whether it's coming off those substances, whether it's getting in community where people can tell you the truth about what's happening and support you as you go no contact or low contact, or go through your exit plan strategy. When a person would go to this link, their behavior is demonstrating a level of calculation and danger that you don't need to go confront them about it. You need to talk to somebody outside the situation who can help you safety plan to get out of that relational dynamic, because the person's already demonstrated they're a danger to you, and that if they could, they would set you up to have some kind of medical situation or potentially unalive you. And so we have to be sober about the reality of that and move accordingly.
That is pretty true. I believe we probably get to the best conclusion of this interview, Kimberly. I really want to thank you so much again. I believe all the information that you provide were very useful, and I truly hope that everyone that is gonna watch our video and listen to us will take good care of it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again for this opportunity, Kimberly. I'm really happy I had you here today.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us today.
Yes, absolutely.